Don't imagine him as a heartless, emotionless man, afraid of his father, caring for his mother, and crying over her cancer. From another point of view, he is the one who condemned millions of Jews to extinction by committing one of the greatest crimes in human history, and was the main reason for the outbreak of World War II. The question that comes to your mind: how could a short, thin man be the reason for the outbreak of World War II? How could a man like him unite the ranks around him and convince them to follow him? Is he a man with a cause, or a man who could have been the reason for the destruction of humanity? Adolf Hitler. Let's sail together on the journey of his formation and upbringing. Adolf Hitler was born on the 20th of April, 1889, in a small village in Upper Austria, on the border with the Federal Republic of Germany, called Braunau am Inn, short for Braunau, in the town of Braunau-Oberg, which is now in Austria, but was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Hitler was the fourth of 6 children of a customs official father, Alois Hitler, who was married twice, and a farmer mother, Clara Hitler, his father's third wife. Hitler's childhood was difficult and full of poverty and deprivation. His mother died when he was 13 years old, leaving a deep impression on him. After his father retired from the state customs service, Adolf Hitler spent most of his childhood in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria, which remained his favorite city throughout his life, and he expressed his desire to be buried there. As a child, Hitler feared and hated his father because he was violent in his treatment of him and his mother and beat him severely. On the other hand, Hitler was a devoted son to his mother, who died in 1907, about 4 years after her husband, after being diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 47. Hitler entered primary school in Linz and was an excellent student at this stage, but this excellence did not continue with him in high school, which angered his father, who wanted his son to be a government employee like him. Hitler had artistic talent since childhood and dreamed of becoming an artist. However, he failed the entrance exam to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, which increased his frustration and feeling of failure. After failing to achieve his dream, Hitler became homeless and wandered the streets of Vienna, where he worked in hard and simple jobs. This difficult period in his life contributed to shaping his deviant personality and increasing his feelings of bitterness and anger. During his period of homelessness, Hitler was influenced by the nationalist and racist ideas that were prevalent in Austria and Germany at that time. He began to adopt extremist ideas about the superiority of the Aryan race, which would later become the core of his Nazi ideology. His father, Alois Hitler, died in 1903, but left a pension and sufficient savings to support his wife and children. Hitler did not want ordinary government jobs, and he says about himself, "Despite my young age, I began to think about the future, and no profession or trade appealed to me, and I never had a desire to follow in my father's footsteps, as work seemed to me like a rope that always pulls one down." In the beginning of his life, he was forced to do various jobs to provide for the requirements of living, but he was haunted by a strong desire to reach something greater, and when World War I broke out, he volunteered to serve in the German army and participated in the war, and was wounded, and received 2 medals for his bravery in combat. After years full of activity and striving for the top, he became Chancellor of Germany, with the rank of Prime Minister, in 1933, and in the following year he consolidated power in his hands after the death of German President Hindenburg, so he ruled Germany and called himself leader and chancellor of Germany and supreme commander of the armed forces. In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich and was tested for Austrian military service in February 1914. He was deemed unfit due to his thinness and weak build. But when World War I broke out on the 28th of July, 1914, he applied to the Bavarian King Louis III for permission to serve, and his application was granted. After about 8 weeks of training, in October 1914, Hitler was assigned to the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment, which fought in Belgium and France. Hitler had one of the most dangerous jobs of the war, as a messenger between the armies on the Western Front, and he took part in a number of major battles, the First Battle of Ypres, the Somme, Arras, and Passchendaele. In October 1916, while participating in the Battle of the Somme, Hitler was wounded in the leg, and 2 years later he was hospitalized after being temporarily blinded by a mustard gas attack days before the war ended in November 1918. For his bravery in the war, Hitler was awarded the Iron Cross, 2nd Class, in 1914, and the Iron Cross, 1st Class, in 1918. The humiliating document that forced Germany to have no army after its defeat in World War I had a profound effect on Hitler. Hitler's ideas included the inequality of races, nations, and individuals as part of an unalterable natural order that glorified the Aryan race as the creative element of humanity. The greatest enemy of Nazism, in Hitler's view, was not liberal democracy in Germany, which was already on the verge of collapse, but Marxism, with its insistence on internationalism and economic struggle. Apart from Marxism, Hitler believed that the greatest enemy of all was the Jew, who for Hitler was the embodiment of evil. In 1920, Hitler was assigned to work in the field of propaganda for the Nazi Party after joining the German Workers' Party after the end of the war. Hitler used his organizational skills to develop the party by embodying his ideas and visions. He raised slogans calling for Germans to unite into one nation and organized a private army called the Storm Troopers. The Nazi Party led a failed coup attempt in November 1923, and Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison for treason. He spent only 9 months in Landsberg Castle, which he used to complete the first volume of his autobiography, Mein Kampf, which contained the principles of the Nazi movement. He completed it in 1927. After his release from prison, Hitler was banned from giving speeches, first in Bavaria, the richest of the 16 states in Germany, and then in several other German states. This ban remained in effect until 1928. Hitler's star began to shine when his party achieved significant results in the 1928 parliamentary elections. The party's membership increased again, thanks to continuous propaganda and exploitation of the global economic crisis. Hitler's personality became prominent, and the masses rallied around him. The onset of the Depression in 1929 brought a new period of political instability in Germany, and in 1930 Hitler allied himself with the nationalist Alfred Hugenberg to campaign against the Young Plan, which called for Germany to pay 269 billion marks, reduced to 129 billion marks, in reparations to the Allies in World War I, which Hitler rejected. On the 13th of January 1933, President Hindenburg appointed him Chancellor of Germany. Once in power, Hitler established an absolute dictatorship, eliminated Nazi opponents, banned the press opposed to the national and nationalist aims of the Nazi Party, and banned all trade unions and other political parties. When elections were held on the 5th of March, 1933, The Nazis won 43.9% of the vote. 2 days later, the Enabling Act was passed, giving Hitler full powers. Hitler withdrew from the Disarmament Conference and the League of Nations in October 1933 and signed a non-aggression pact with Poland in January 1934. The biggest change came in August 1934, when German President Hindenburg died. The military leaders agreed to merge the Chancellery and Presidency into a single office, with supreme command of the armed forces transferred to the Reich, the official name of Germany, and officers and soldiers sworn allegiance to Hitler personally. Hitler ruled all of Germany and called himself the leader and Chancellor of Germany, and his rule became known as the Third Reich. In November 1937, at a secret meeting of his military leaders, Hitler outlined his plans for future invasions, beginning with Austria and Czechoslovakia. In January 1938, Hitler declared that he would no longer serve those who were not loyal in their acceptance of the Nazi dynamic, and expressed his eternal gratitude to Mussolini, the leader of fascist Italy. Before completing his third year in power, his foreign conquests began, starting with sending troops into the Rhineland, then invading Austria, then Czechoslovakia, and many regions and countries in Europe, and forming an axis with Japan and Italy, in contrast to the Franco-British-American Soviet alliance. Hitler's goal was to pave the way for a new order in Europe, 1933-1939, and to expel the Jews from the Greater German Reich. And in 1941 this policy changed from expulsion to extermination. His invasion of Poland in 1939 led to the Allies declaring war on him, and during the war, his forces swept through large areas of Europe and captured large areas of the Soviet Union, killing nearly 3 million Russians before the Soviets were able to crush the German army in the months-long Battle of Stalingrad. This defeat was a major turning point in the war, and then the German forces were defeated at the Battle of El Alamein in Egypt in the second half of 1942 by the Allies, and the German army began to collapse until it retreated to Germany, and Mussolini was captured in July 1943 and executed in April 1945. In 1945, the Allied armies succeeded in invading Germany. The Holocaust is considered one of the most heinous crimes committed in human history, and it is the systematic and planned extermination of about 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime in Germany with the support of its collaborators during World War II. This crime was part of a broader campaign launched by the Nazis to eliminate those they considered enemies of the Aryan race, including gypsies, homosexuals, the disabled, and opposition politicians. This crime resulted from Hitler's racism, who believed that the Aryan race was superior to humans and that the Jews were inferior to them, and his desire for global domination and his sense of superiority. We will discuss the crime of the Holocaust in detail in another video that we recommend watching. In the last days of the war, Hitler was living in an underground bunker in Berlin, known as the Führer Bunker. His psychological state was deteriorating significantly, which was reflected in his hasty decisions and contradictory orders. Hitler married his mistress, Eva Braun, on April 29th, and then they decided to commit suicide together. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler and Eva Braun shot themselves in the head, and their bodies were found partially burned in the bunker garden. According to eyewitnesses, Hitler's assistants burned the bodies to avoid them becoming a symbol of the Nazi regime. Although there is strong evidence of Hitler's suicide, there are some theories that question this story, claiming that he fled to Argentina or elsewhere. However, the majority of historians consider the suicide theory to be the most likely, based on the available evidence and numerous testimonies. Dear viewer, do you think Hitler committed suicide, or was he killed? And what do you think of Hitler? Is he the maker of the German Renaissance? Or is he the greatest war criminal in human history? I would be happy to write your opinion in the comments, and please subscribe to the channel to receive everything new in God's care and protection.